Alright, hello Astro subscribers and welcome back to another installment of the Houses Through Lords series. Today we're going to be doing the 11th Lord through houses, and if you haven't seen any videos in this series before, this is a video about Western and Vedic astrology, and if you haven't seen the videos on the house system or the sign system, particularly the sign of Aquarius for this video, go back and do that. But basically what the House Lords are is a system whereby the dispositor of a particular house, meaning the planet that rules that house, is going to be sitting in another sign and house somewhere in the chart. And think of it as the battery, the planet that rules that sign is the battery that's powering the sign. So let's say your 11th house is Aries, let's say, if you're a Gemini ascendant, and Mars is in the 12th house, let's just say. That would mean that you would have your 11th Lord in the 12th house, and as a result of that, the 12th house and the aspects of the 12th house, what that represents archetypally, would influence the 11th house and would influence the things that the 11th house represents in your life. So as a result of that, you can use the House Lord system as a method of understanding where the events in your life and the places that those events happen in, the types of events that happen, as symbolized by the signs and houses. You can see where they're going to come out in your life and how they're going to show up and emerge, and where they're going to come from. So that's basically the power of the House Lord system. It's a very, very useful tool. And so yeah, without further ado, on to the 11th Lord through houses. So 11th Lord in the first house is a very good placement. So the 11th house is all about the physically transcendent. So the 12th Lord is about the spiritual, or the 12th house is about the spiritually transcendent, the abstract creativity. The 11th house is kind of a physical mirror or a material mirror of the 12th house. So it's about the physical ideal, the physical creation, the physical creativity. And so it's about systems, making systems more efficient, making them better, becoming an engineer, becoming a consultant, anything that makes the material world move more smoothly. And if you have that in the first house represents your body, and your body is the vehicle through which you experience life, obviously. So when you have the 11th Lord in the first house, what tends to happen is you become a magnet for improvement. You become a magnet for making things move better around you, move more physically smoothly around you. And of course, this is going to depend on the whole chart, but in general, there's going to be a thread of efficiency around this person. This person sort of magnetizes systems to be more efficient around them. That's kind of their aura, as with any Lord in the house. 11th Lord in second house is an interesting placement, but it's one of those ones that's very physically prosperous, but loses detail. If you watch the video I put out yesterday about the four horsemen, I was of the self-described four horsemen atheist group, and I analyzed their natal charts because they're extreme critics of astrology. I talked a little bit about the Taurus-Aquarius opposition in Dan Dennett's chart, and how basically Aquarius is a sign of engineering, and it's Uranus, which rules Aquarius, is exalted in Scorpio, and how when you have a Taurus-Aquarius relationship in a chart, you tend to be a revolutionary who sees the world in very black and white terms. You tend to reduce everything to a simple factor. And that can be something to watch out for, because a square is indeed a negative aspect. So when you have 11th Lord in the second house represents Taurus, 11th house represents Aquarius, what tends to happen is you trade depth of thought, depth of detail for a certain amount of simplistic material prosperity. And that's not necessarily a bad thing if that's what you're after. Again, I'm not saying everybody who has this placement is shallow or whatever. I'm not even saying everybody who has this placement is going to be rich, although it's more likely if you do have this placement that you're going to be more materially prosperous, because you're going to be focused more on that and your mind's naturally going to gravitate toward that. And you tend to achieve what you have ambition for and are willing to act on. So anyway, it depends on the rest of the chart, as always. That's always the remainder here. It's like you have to look at the whole chart. You can't just look at one sign and placement and be like, oh, well, that doesn't apply to me, and therefore this stuff doesn't work. It's like, no, you have to look at it holistically. You can't be reductive about it. All right, so 11th Lord in the third house is a placement which effectively, this is actually very good because they're both air signs, so this is a trine aspect. And what tends to happen here is just a person prospers off of novelty, original ideas, creative thinking. These are people who actually can be professionally artists and actually make a living that way. So this is actually a very good thing. Any sort of writing career, any sort of sales are really good here. Any sort of art, this is all very good for this placement. There's really not that many downsides to that placement. It tends to flow pretty harmoniously there. 11th Lord in the fourth house, sorry. So 11th Lord in the fourth house is difficult because the fourth house is naturally Cancer, and Aquarius, the natural enemy of Aquarius is Cancer, because Aquarius is very materially focused and Cancer will even be self-destructive in the pursuit of those it cares about and the ideals it believes in. So, Cancer is one of these idealistic signs, which is very extreme, which is very caring, and Aquarius is very progress-oriented, but it's not necessarily the most caring sign in the world, because caring and progress, although they can go together, it's not an easy fit. And so with 11th Lord in the fourth house, you can definitely go into medicine as a job or a career. You can definitely find prosperity in helping people. You should help people who are sick and help people who are hurting and help nature as much as possible, because every time you do that, you're going to be disproportionately rewarded. This being said, caring and medicine is not necessarily the easiest way to achieve your dreams unless your dreams are caring and helping people. So, materially, this might not be the best placement in the world. Morally, it has the potential to be quite strong and leave a lot of good karmic impact on the world if it doesn't become too much of an extremist. So the things you're going to have to watch out for here are idealism and extremism based in empathy. Okay, so 11th Lord in the fifth house. This is a position that's interesting because 11th house is the crowd, or is the people, or is the audience for an art exhibit, let's say, or culture, society, or anything like that. And Leo, which is the fifth house, is the art. It's the people on the stage. So when you have 11th Lord in the fifth house, what tends to happen is people do creative work and they get paid for it, and then they put most of what they earn back into another creative work. So for them, the reward is the creative process, not the reward. And because of that, these people tend to be very prolific, but they also tend to be constantly in motion, and they tend to be constantly self-critical as well, because this is a seventh. So fifth is seventh from 11th, and seventh is always the elimination process. It's the kidneys, it's the bile tract, it's the digestive process. specifically the elimination of toxins. So these people are very self-critical of their work, and they tend to always keep putting energy back in to their work instead of retaining it or enjoying it. And if you enjoy your work, that's great, but sometimes your greatest curse can be your worst enemy. So 11th Lord in the 6th house. So this is a position of chronic analysis, and these people tend to be very self-critical of their aspirations, and they tend to have a harder time settling into an identity, because when they achieve something that they were going for, they tend to sort of retool it and wonder if it was good enough. And there's also a constant conflict between their material desires and their moral desires. And this has a very similar nature to the 4th Lord and the 6th, the 4th Lord and the 6th Lord and whatnot, because the 6th from Aquarius is Cancer, and therefore the 4th Lord of the 11th house and the 11th Lord in the 4th house and 11th Lord in the 6th house have similar qualities, because they're both related to that 6-4 Virgo Cancer sort of energy that Aquarius tends to have a very hard time dealing with, because it's basically its opposite or its enemy, its antithesis. So yeah, there's a lot of rethinking, a lot of processing. It's one of those positions, like any position, that is difficult to assimilate or reconcile, where there's the possibility of extreme gain, because this is, sixth from Aquarius has this sort of Virgo and Scorpio aspect to it, and wherever Scorpio is, there's the potential for sort of a higher form of Taurus, where you get this, not a simple pleasure, but a deeply, deeply complex pleasure, where all of the intricacies of life are taken into account. So that it's possible to get there with this, but it's very, very difficult. And these people are, again, very self-critical and very meticulous in their creative process. 11th Lord in the 9th house. These people are basically idealists. They're specifically political idealists. These are basically your revolutionaries, your diplomats, your people who, they don't just want to be a diplomat to one person, they want to be a diplomat to the whole world. Aquarius and Sagittarius, which is the natural sign related to the 9th house, are both very, very political signs, and Sagittarius is probably more abstract and more political than Aquarius. So there's this instinct towards massive change and massive spreading of ideas. And this tends to be a very strong placement, but also, again, it can be overwhelming to be so politically motivated. 11th Lord in the 10th house is basically, this is similar to the 11th Lord in the 2nd, except that where the 11th Lord in the 2nd doesn't face many delays, it also has a more stable growth pattern, where 11th Lord in the 10th house is going to put somebody through trials and tribulations in order to get where they want to go in the end. So they have a giant ambition. 11th Lord in the 10th house has massive dreamlike ambitions, pseudo-spiritual ambitions, and not in a bad way. It's just that their ambitions are so lofty that you could see them as like a sort of spiritual manna or spiritual dream. And a lot of roadblocks get put in their way. These people face intense opposition to their goals and their beliefs. So this is a difficult placement, but a rewarding one. 11th Lord in the 11th house. This is actually pretty straightforward. So any planet or that's put in its own sign or house tends to defend that sign or house, the values of that sign or house in the truest form. And if you want to know what the truest form of the 11th house is, just look at the Aquarius Ascendant video I made way back when on this channel. It's definitely still there. So 11th Lord in the 12th house, well, like all 12th or lords in 12th house placements, this tends to be a placement which is sort of spiritual, sort of tends to like isolation, tends to like deep thought, tends to like retreating from the game of society and going into nature and going into the dream world and whatnot. That's kind of where Pisces lives. To these people, the true reward of fulfilling their dream is to be able to detach and disconnect from society. So these people are willing to work for their ability to leave the game, to leave the matrix, so to speak, to be as free as possible. These people are true freedom seekers, and they're not freedom seekers in the sense that they want to reform society. They're freedom seekers in the way that they actually want to leave and detach from society. So if that's what you're into, feel free to do that. And if that's not what you're into, then you probably don't have 11th Lord in the 12th house, or if you do, you have some weird variation of it that doesn't fit into the standard framing of that. So yeah, that was my video on the 11th Lord through houses. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'm always looking for ways to improve and ways to enhance my communication and production skills. So just, yeah, let me know what you think I could be doing better. And also, since we're coming near the end of this series, I'm interested in knowing what you guys want my next series to be, what astrological concept you want me to sort of dive into next. So yeah, let me know about that in the comments too. And have a good one. Till next time.